Thank you for having us too. I mean,
Pleasure.
before we even start, like, how did you guys, put the whole Lane Africa thing together? How did it
Oh, okay.
start? I just
So
wondering.
quite interesting. That's a great question. Last year, I'll share a bit of my personal story. I was supposed to go to business school last year.
Mm-hmm.
Got denied Canadian visa and had to reapply last
Oh.
year around September. And the interesting thing was I attended the webinar called the MBA Tour,
Mm-hmm.
where I met a number of people who became my friends. And we decided, we could come together and just help ourselves throughout the whole application process. So I created a group for that purpose. We started off as a bit of 13, and I think we grew to 20, and we all went through the whole admission cycle from September last year till some are still going through the process, right? I'm trying to decide on what schools to go to.
Right.
But with the success rate many of our members achieved due to that community leverage that we had people calling each other up and wondering and asking questions about, that being able to come to a group and ask 18 people, 13 people, you know what, guys, this is where I am. And you have all people ready to offer their support and help in any way they can was really valuable. So when COVID hit, we thought about reaching out to many people. And the first thing we did was try and gauge the impact COVID would have on us going to business school. And it pretty much grew from there to about 60 something subscribers right now. And the old dream of just an MBA pretty much transformed from that point. And we began to see that if Africa is really going to rise from its own ashes, education is a very big part of that. And if you can lower the barrier for entry into many of these business schools, you'd realize that you just need the right kind of information. And not everybody has to go to the Ivy League schools to get that good experience that would perhaps set themselves and their generation on the right path to financial independence, but as well as they grow and get better, they can release their energy into something else with respect to helping Africa as a continent grow. So we took the long-term view to say that how can we leverage the power of community right now to lower that barrier to business school entry. And it doesn't have to just be the top 10, right? We're also trying to demystify the whole, you have to go to the top 10 MBA schools before you get a great experience, and trying to spread that and encourage. There are about 100 great schools, top 100 MBA programs. And imagine if there was at least 5 Africans in those schools. It's about 500. I know the numbers are could be pretty much higher than that. But if you're sending 1,000 Africans through the MBA program without as much financial burden, by pairing them with schools that will provide them the right kind of funding, what you're doing is you're lowering the barrier to MBA entry. And the other thing you're also doing is you're lowering the debt burden that students are having. I mean, it's one thing for the nation as a whole to be indebted to whatever country we're currently indebted to. It's another thing for its own citizens to also be equally indebted to the same system. So trying to demystify that top 10 Ivy League experience, must have Ivy League experience, and helping people understand that, you know what, even with what you know, you're qualified to get into any top 100 MBAs, what we hope to achieve. And we are doing that because we believe that the more we do that, the more people start to think about the generation after them, the generation after their generation, and start to take a long-term view with respect to how to bring back businesses to Africa, grow businesses in Africa up to the point that the economic power that we can derive from such business engagement can be leveraged into some sort of political movement that eventually leads us to where we want to be. So that's the whole idea around Lane at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great one. I mean, I was just curious, how you people came together, and it looks like you have a very organized, like group, and I was just impressed, and I just wanted to know how you guys came about the whole thing. All right, so I guess we can start.
Thank you very much. Yes, we can. Yeah, thanks for that. So once again, I want to say thank you to you, Samuel, and also, I know Sandra introduced you to us, and then we attended. We tried to make sure that as much as our members attended your webinar, and I personally also attended, and it was a great one. I think Nomso pretty much stood out to me. So when Amarachi was talking to us, like, okay, is there a possibility for us to get Nomso on board? Because Nomso was, I know you had to temper some of the things Nomso said at the webinar, just try and tell people that, you know what, it's not exactly as bad as that, but it was good to have that kind of view. Something that is not hard sell.
Yeah, that was the whole point. Like, you know, people would think it's all rosy, and then you come to school and then you are faced with this big blow, and it's like nobody talk. I know Nomso. I mean, if you can unmute and talk about it, like he basically talks about it all the time, how the second years didn't do a great job guiding us, making it like it helping us to appreciate what the kind of work we are supposed to expect. And, you know, we felt like maybe it's about time we let people know what the truth really is, you know.
Can I just say something briefly?
Sure.
Sam, thanks for putting this together. I mean, don't get me wrong. I probably, I probably, you know, came off as, you know, oh, it's hard, you know. It's
no. You know, I completely understood where you were coming from. Right?
But to be honest, to be honest, it's not difficult. It's not hard. It's not difficult. There are just nuances to it that people should know, right? So it's not hard, it's not difficult, it can be done. Like Sam is in Barclays, you know. Sam, no disrespect to you, but Sam grew up in the village. I went to Futo Oweri, right? So like you can do it, like everybody can. Like it's just the nuances to it. And I feel like at the end of the day, we need to play this forward, right? Because to be very honest, everybody on this chat, that's the network that we have. That's the network that I have. That's the network that you all have, right? Because at the end of the day, one way or the other, you find yourself on the continent, and you need to reach out to people, like. And the people you reach out to are people that, you know, were with you in the struggle. Like, hey, I'm back to Nigeria. You know, this is what I've been doing. You know, and maybe your friend is already a senator or he's a governor somewhere. You could just knock in and say, hey, chairman, how far? You know, and then something comes through. So that's what we're trying to do, right? We're not trying to create a negative image of maybe people that came before us, or everybody did a fantastic job in his own, you know, respect. But we're just trying to like forward. And so when, you know, you guys said I should talk, I was like, sure, you know, and you know, I'm happy to be here. So if you have any questions, you know, Sam and myself will, you know, hopefully be able to trash them.
You know, thank you very much. The many things you mentioned already that you would have the time to talk about as we go into this webinar. But just to glean off some of the things you've said, Samuel, your secret is you grew up in the village. So could you just introduce yourself and tell us how?
Well, I mean, he's not entirely. I wasn't born in a village.
No, that's not true.
I mean,
that's not true.
So I grew up in the second regional capital of Ghana called Kumasi. I don't know if you have ever heard of it. The only place that is
we know
Ghana
Kumasi.
Okay, so I grew up in Kumasi, but you know the part of Kumasi that I grew up in, at a point in my area, we were like 2 people going to high school, because our area was well known for metal workshops. So there's this place in Kumasi called Swami Magazine, and that is where like they do all the metal works in Ghana. It's like the biggest metal workshop area in Ghana. It's like it's almost the size of Charlottesville. I mean, that's just Tunum. So like it's a whole community, right? And we were living in the middle of Swami Magazine. And so for those of us who were living in Swami Magazine, when you finish junior high school, you have to wait for like, you know, in the Ghanaian system, you have to wait for like 3 or 4 months And around that time, you have to make some money. So people will start working as apprentices with people who have shops in some magazine. And once you start seeing money, you don't want to go back, And that was like the kind of trap that most of my friends fell into. Like they started doing some magazine stuff and they didn't want to go back to school. Some started first year in high school, they just dropped off because you go to high school, you start elective maths, commerce, and you're like, damn, I'm going back to the money that I know. And so it wasn't the best of environment. It wasn't the most encouraging environment that anyone could be in. But I think with the support of like my friend, we were all in the same school actually. And so I remember when I started high school, I mean, I'm plugging, but when I started high school, the grades weren't going well. One day one of my friends and I were coming back home and we started discussing this guy who got like 90% in commerce. And my friend, Africa, my friend said he was using Saints to get the grades. And like that was when like both of us were talking and I was like, nah, I don't think that's what he does. I think this guy actually learns his books and that is how he passed. So maybe if we can put together a plan to start learning. So we started that we'll be learning 30 minutes a day. I did the 30 minutes a day for like a week. I realized I knew most of the things that we were talking about in class. It felt good. So I extended it to 1 hour, 2 hours. And then before I realized I was learning like 4 hours a day. So that's how I got through high school. Before we wrote our WASI, I wrote NOVDEC and I got like, 6 or something like that. And so I was able to get into the university before WASI even came out. And in the university, there were some issues, but there were some, sorry, there's something like, yeah. Can you see me?
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So in the university, there were some, obstacles that we had to surmount, but, we did, and we graduated with a good class. And right before I finished university, I saw this WhatsApp message going around going around. And my girlfriend at the time sent me the WhatsApp message. The company was looking for someone with a particular grade or GPA to apply for the job. I applied to the job. I went for interviews. I got a job. And that was when it was in that company that I met people who were into this MBA thing. So I remember the first person.
So let me just hold you there. That's the next question, but I just want to give Nomso time to quickly just give us an overview. Because your story is pretty interesting, and I think Forbes should write about you someday. Because the truth about it is, many people, there's so much myth around MBAs, right? And if you understand, until you work in a certain industry, you work in a bank, or you work in consulting, or you work in, people don't dream big enough or see the need to do an MBA. And that's what we're trying to break down. So to hear your story, to hear the fact that you came from a kind of environment where there were only 2 people going to high school, and here you are working at Barclays, Barclays. Yeah. That's something to dream for. So so the same question over to you. Just quickly give us an overview of something about you we could never have found on the internet.
That's a difficult question. Something about me you can't find on the internet. I don't know. I guess honestly, I don't know what to say.
Let's bring it down to your LinkedIn profile. Something we can't find on your LinkedIn profile.
Well, Sam, is there anything?
Okay, just tell us about yourself.
I play soccer. Right? I play soccer. I mean, you probably can't find that on my LinkedIn profile, but I play soccer. I guess that answers your question.
Okay. So someone was going to say something. You're saying, how about you start with?
Yeah, I was just saying, how about you start from like KPMG?
Okay. Well, I went to Futo undergrad. I mean, if I don't know if anyone here, went to Futo, but I went to Futo undergrad. And if you know Futo very well, I stayed in a hostel. We used to be like 16 in a room. I'm trying to play to the hustler story. It used to be like 16 in a room. It wasn't like it wasn't a good. I mean, it was a good experience in terms of like my learning, but it was a tough experience, like having to be like 16 in a room and like
Wow.
go through
16.
oh yeah, like go through like the dirt in the hostels and all that stuff. But then I finished. I started off working. I worked in GTB for like 2 years plus. Switched to KPMG because I wanted to like grow and then learn accounting as well. And then I did my ACCA. Qualified. I qualified whilst in Guarantee Trust Bank, and then I wanted to make more money. After working in KPMG for about 2 years, and I wanted to make more money, so I moved to like an oil field services company, NOV in Lagos. And I started. I made a little change from there. To be honest, like Nigeria just got frustrating, and I just felt, I was done, which I'm sure is the sentiment a lot of you, a lot of you this webinar have. And I was like, man, I'm done. So I started looking for how to run, and a couple of my friends had gone through this process. So I started like asking, hey, what's going on? Like, and then that's how I wrote GRE, and I'm here. So,
Okay, so let's quickly talk about the number of schools you applied to, because the topic for today is how wide should you cast your net. We'll talk about one or two other things, but the main theme is how many schools do I have to apply to? In your own case, how did you arrive at the number of schools you applied to, the schools you applied to, and what you think looking back and saying, you know what, maybe I should have applied to more, maybe I should have applied to less.
Are you talking to me? Is it me or Sam?
Yes, Nomso, we'll start with you and then we'll move on to Sam with the same question.
Okay. So, at the end of the day, personal preferences should come into this, right? So, as an African, you look up to people that went to Harvard and Stanford and which other school?
Yale.
Which other school?
Yale
and all those stuff. But the truth of the matter is, America, and the reason why we have those what's the right word to use? The reason why you have those preferences is because the sort of like business leaders in Africa all went to those schools, right? So you want to be like those people, and then you're like, oh, maybe if I go to Harvard, I have an opportunity to, be on the board of an oil company or something, and then you make those decisions. But America is so big that there are many good schools in the US, right? So for me, when I was going to come to business school, I was like, okay, first of all, I mean, I would have loved to go to Harvard, but looking back, I'm like, no. But looking back, I'm like, no,
serious?
I'm not going to Harvard. And the reason is because if you're going for an MBA program, you only don't want to like get, like go to a good school. You also want to have fun, like you want to enjoy it. Now, I figured that going to Harvard, it doesn't matter, is like they have really, really smart people at Harvard. So don't get me wrong, there are extremely smart people here at Darden, right? So I was like, I don't want to be in an environment where I'm competing. I just want to get a job, learn what I can learn, and have fun, right?
And I know what you've said is pretty interesting, right? And I'm saying this just for the sake of everyone, in case anyone missed this. If I'm to summarize your point, is we think of America as only 10 business schools.
No,
but when you get into America, you realize that it is so big that wherever you go to, you find yourself having the same opportunities that other people who have been trying to force feed themselves into top 5, top 10 MBAs would have.
Exactly.
Right.
I agree. I totally agree with you. That's 100% right. So like I looked at it and I was like, okay, I have family members living in Texas, so I would probably want to be close to my family members. So I applied for UT Texas. Now, if you go to Texas today, the average Walmart store has a UT merch in the store, right? So what I mean UT merch is, like University of Texas, they are called the Longhorns. So they have that like the bullhorn, with it, like they use the purple color. Like it's a great school. If you're in Texas, is almost bigger than Nigeria, right?
Bigger than Nigeria, actually.
Texas, and you're a UT grad, you're seen as you're a big deal. Like,
okay. So UT is the Harvard. Sorry to interrupt you. It's like the Harvard of Texas.
Exactly. Now I'm just giving an example. So like, I was like, oh, UT is awesome. And my family lives in, like, some family members, live in Texas. So let me just apply there just in case. But I really wanted to come to Darden because Darden is a good banking school, right? If you want to get into Wall Street, Darden is an awesome place for you to make that transition. So
how many schools did you apply to at the end of the day?
So at the end of the day, I applied to 3 schools. I applied to Darden, Duke, and University of Texas, McCombs.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what was the outcome for those schools, and how did you eventually find yourself in Darden?
I got into the 3 of them, actually. I got admitted into the 3 of them. I mean, but I wanted to go to Darden, and Darden gave me more money, and I was like, okay. So I wanted to go to Darden anyways, and they gave me more money. So the choice was easy,
I'm going to just one thing I'd want us to talk about is also the money, because the truth is finances is the biggest driver for people not wanting to apply to business school. By the time you do that math, you do the conversion to Naira, you see that you probably have to work for 10 years without eating to be able to save that money up.
Yeah.
Right. So with those schools that you got offers from, what kind of financial support did you get from them? And what do you think could have made you got more from them?
I think at the end of the day, like, you need to be tactical about how you request, for funds. It's all about tactics, right? And that's also one of the reasons why I suggest to people not to apply to just one school. So if you apply to 2 or 3 schools, and you say, for example, you got admitted to the 3 of them, and you got admitted to the 3 of them, and the schools you really wanted to go to, or the school you really wanted to go to, did not give you as much. Like, you can approach them and say, hey, I really love you guys. I want to come to your school, because of XYZ, but unfortunately, I got money from this other school. Is there any way you guys can, add some more money? I really want to come to, the school. And they'll be like, okay, we'll get back to you. Most schools will give you something, except Harvard and Stanford. And maybe Booth, right?
They have 10
because those ones don't care.
Your position
yeah, they don't care about you. So most schools will say, okay, no problem, we'll add some more money, And so that's exactly what I did. So, like, I got money from UT. I didn't get from Darden initially. No, I didn't get from any of them. Then I begged, and then one gave me, and I took that one. I came to Darden. I was like, hey, Darden, this one gave me money. Well, I like you, give me. And then Darden gave me. And then I went to the other one. I was like, hey, I like you. Darden gave me money, give me. And then those gave me. And I came back to Darden, and I was like, unfortunately, this is it. And then Darden gave me again. So it's just being tactical about it, spread your net. Don't apply to just one school. It's risky, to apply to just one school. What if you don't get it anyways? And then when you get the admission, then you can now start thinking of what tactics do I need to use to get funding. There is money out there. Samuel is aware of this. There's a Darden grad. I can't remember when he finished, but he's a real estate guy in Brooklyn, and he gave Darden $100 million last year. I think he said 70 or 80 million, or how many million is for first generation graduates or something. I can't remember. Sam, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But Darden as a business school has around $400 million in endowment, right? There's money. So, and this is just Darden. Like, imagine what Duke has. Imagine what, other schools, Cornell, Kellogg, all these other schools. Imagine what they have. UT, their alumni consistently give back to these schools instead of paying those monies as taxes. So like there are funds for you, and if you ask and you put forth like genuine reasons, they will give you.
Thank you so much for that answer, Nomso. And to everyone listening, Zoom, of course, has a 40 minutes bar on the videos we could do for free. But if this cuts us off, just relog in with the same details. It's still the same. You meet us here, and we can continue from where we stopped. It's 4:34 p.m., so we have no less than 26 minutes to cover other issues, so we still have time at that point. Samuel, let me let you start with the same question, right? How many schools did you apply to? What funding did you get from them? And what was the thinking process that went into deciding?
So can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
I believe we can.
Okay. So I was trying to play safe, right? So I applied to 7 or 8, I think 7 schools. But my thought process in the whole application was that I needed to have a mixture of, top 15, top 30, top 40, and regional schools, right? So by regional schools, that is basically what Nomso talked about. Like, there are some schools that in their region, they are very big, but nationally, maybe they might not be known. So you go to Texas, for instance, huge state. And so if you get UT in Texas, it might be a regional school, but in Texas, you are like the king. I can also mention another regional school as like maybe Olin in St. Louis. They are king in Missouri, right? You have a school like Carlson School of Business, I think in Minnesota. Minnesota is like one of those states that are like on their own. Nobody really hears about them. But if you are a Carlson grad in Minnesota, you have like a huge upper hand when it comes to job search. So I wanted to have a mix of those regional schools. And of course, I applied to Duke as well. I applied to Darden, and I applied to Cornell. And then I did Olin and Simon, which is like the regional Olin, Simon, and then I did Carlson. And I think there is some other.
Simon is a great school, especially if you're in upstate New York.
Yeah, so New York. And then, I think I did one other school. And out of the 7, I got 5 of them. And just as Nomso did, I also used the same strategy. Initially I didn't get any money from Darden, but when I sent them an email that, look, the thought of having $200,000 loan is killing me right now. I really want to attend your school, but I don't think I'm given the political climate. It's always safe to blame it on Trump. Say, given the political climate, I don't even know if I'm going to get
I kind of like that one. It's easy to blame it. Right now, it's easy to blame it on COVID. Maybe not just Trump.
You get it? Yeah. So find something and blame it on it, and talk about your background.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, talk about your background. Like, listen, I'm taking care of my mom. I'm taking care of my nephew. I have this amount in my savings that is not even enough to pay my first 2 deposits. And so, listen, 200,000 is crazy. Can you please do something about it? And trust me, from the reason why these people are always hesitant to give money to Africans is because we don't have Africans giving money back to the school. right? Like Nomso mentioned, this guy who is giving money to the school is a white guy. You don't expect a white guy to give money to a school and say, hey, give it to the Africans. So like the schools have money, they have enough money to spare, but your people didn't create a fund for you, right? There are funds for Native Americans, there are funds for like the same experience. So I was put on wait list at Darden because I applied early action, right? And by the time Darden's offer came, you know, Duke also came, but like between Duke and Darden, it was more about the money. It wasn't really about like the bank or anything because they are all lateral, right? But I had also gotten admission into 3 other schools, and I had paid $1,000 for one school, which I had very good traction, very good conversation with, but I still, it's I guess they understand, right? When the schools are planning for how many students are coming, they also plan for their acceptance rates. So they know that someone is definitely going to reject. But on the issue of deadlines, I just want to plug this in. One problem with we African applicants is we don't ask. You can always ask for a deadline extension and they will give it to you. I remember like when I was about to pay my Darden deposit, my bank was messing up and I called Darden and I was like, listen, I don't think you can get the money by the deadline because my bank is messing up. And the woman told me, look, we need you more than you think you need us, right? And we are not going to let you go because you couldn't pay it within a week or in 2 weeks. Like we are always ready to wait for the money to clear because they need you. So like, I mean, I know yours is quite late in the game, but whoever is struggling with that kind of problem, having multiple deadlines and not knowing what to decide on, just shoot the schools emails and they will give you an extension. But back to your question, it is not wrong to just put together a nice email, send it to them and say, look, I have an offer from this other school. Don't explain why you are ditching them for the other school. Just say you just want them to know that you will not be attending any longer. I don't know if it answers your question.
Can I just add to this?
Mm-hmm.
So I always feel like, in it's a marathon, right? It's not a race, right? And it's a long-term thing. The school you did your MBA with is going to be with you till you leave this earth. So I want to, as much as possible, like have access to that alumni base. I'm thinking the school you are considering or the school that came later on is probably has more reputation than the one you have paid the deposit to, and that's probably why you're thinking of like rescinding and going to the other school. Like think of 20 years from now, when you're in a banquet with white people from America. Like, how do you connect to these people? How? Right? You don't hike. You don't go for ski trips. You don't play golf. One of the only ways you can connect to them is if you guys went to the same school. So imagine if I go for an event in New York, like I've met people in, say, like on a train ride, for example, and we just got into a conversation and they're like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm at Darden, I'm at UVA. Like, oh, awesome. My daughter is in UVA undergrad, and then you can strike a conversation with this person. And here in America, networking is key, right? And then the next thing, the person tells you, hey, you know what? Here's my number. Here's my card. Just give me a call. So you want to be in a position where you have something that you can use to like strike a conversation or like connect to people, connect to that alumni base that would help you grow your career. We went on a ski trip. Me and Sam and some other guys went on a ski trip. When did we go on a ski trip, Sam? I think it was in February, right?
Yeah, it was in February.
Yeah, like we're Africans. Come on, we don't ski. But I hear these white people talk about it all the time. So after I went for that ski trip, and I got into conversations with people, and they're like, oh, and they're talking about skiing. I'm like, yeah, I went skiing in Vermont. And they're like, oh, yeah, I've been there. So, like, it's just a way to have something you can connect with these people, right? So think of it in the long term. Think of it in like 20 years from now. $1,000 would mean nothing to you, right? $2,000 of like deposit fee will mean nothing to you. It's probably a lot to you right now, and I totally understand, but that shouldn't be a factor in you making the decision of whether or not you still stick to the school you've accepted or you go to the other school. If the other school you're considering would help you further your career, especially in the field you want to be in, if you have a higher chance of getting into, I think you mentioned you want to do like marketing or something. If that other school will help you get into marketing better or tech better, then $2,000 is nothing, if you ask me.
When you get a student's loan, you realize $1,000 is nothing.
Aside even
That's all I
student,
noticed.
like you will get scholarship. Like don't
Yeah.
worry, don't just make that a basis for, oh, I've already paid this money, so
Yeah.
I can't change my mind. Just to put it out there. I guess Sam, the host, is busy, so I'm going to anchor this meeting now. Does anyone?
Oh, okay. I'm back online. Okay, I was
Someone
mute
has
for
a
a while.
question. Amarachi has a question. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think she's my anchor host. So
Okay.
anytime there's a backup problem, she
All right,
comes on.
got it.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah, so Nonso, there are a number of things you mentioned, a number of things that Samuel has mentioned that are deep insights I'd just like to reiterate. On your own side, you talked about how applying to more schools isn't just a risk cushion technique or something, but it's also a way for you to get more money from other schools. So you're showing the relationship between the more number of schools you apply to, the more leverage you have with respect to getting more funding. And that's one thing I'm picking from that. Samuel mentioned something about national, regional, and state powers in terms of schools. That's a change in perspective, because what we all do is we just go and look for Financial Times ranking, or we look for any ranking, and then we pick schools based on that. And this is a concept that I'm thinking about right now, and it's a very powerful one, because when you're looking at schools, you need to have different buckets for them. Buckets for national schools, 2 or 3 of them. You should have buckets for regional powerhouse. For instance, not many people know Carlton is a powerhouse in Minnesota, and it is. Not many people know that UT Austin is a powerhouse in Texas, and it is. And there are going to be states like that in California, in all the 50-something states in the US that are powerhouses in their region. So if you made up your mind to settle in those regions after, or you don't mind settling in those regions after your MBA, it might make more sense for you to prioritize them over the national leaders. So that's something I want people to also take into consideration. Ojola is saying something. Those regional schools are big. Even nationally, people respect and know them. The few folks I've reached out to online have shown some connection to my regional school, even though they didn't attend my chosen school.
Yeah, so to kind of support what is it Ojola just
Ojola,
said,
yes.
right? So when you attend a school, let's say let's use the Carlson as a proxy for regional schools, right? When you attend a school like Carlson in Minnesota, right, there are people from the states that did not necessarily attend the school. Maybe there are people from Minnesota that are in Howard and all those things. But like Nomso said, because you attended a school that is well known in their city, it becomes a point of connection for the two of you. And so even though it is a regional school and it is big in the region, when you move outside the region and you meet someone who maybe attended Duke, but the person is from Minnesota, it becomes something to connect you. The point is, everything in the US is about connection. So you always have to find something that connects you to someone to create a conversation that will lead to a job or, a network or something like that. So those regional schools are very, very big in their region. And in most cases, they transcend even beyond their regions into national, depending on how you manage the connection.
Mm-hmm. So Sam and Nomso, before we go into Jerry and GMAT, I know you guys took diverse exams. Before we go into that, there's something you mentioned right now, and I just wanted, hopefully, your answer would be evidence to the point I'm trying to make. With your job opportunity at Barclays, what kind of network did you leverage to get that opportunity? Was it a school-based network, or it was some sort of network outside of school?
So if you're looking at a company, even though we are not talking about recruiting, if you're looking at a company, the first network that you should fall on is your school. But if you have someone that is very close to you in the organization, which I had, my former boss was at Barclays, I first fell on that network, but he told me, hey, we are very close, but I cannot help you in any way. You still have to go back to your school network, which then confirms the fact that your first point of contact should be a network from your school. And then when you have, even if you connect to someone who is an African in the organization, the person will tell you, connect to your school. The reason is that these companies do campus recruitment. They don't do, unless it is like a diversity type of recruitment. Every recruitment is campus based. And so your first connection should be someone in your school. And then you schedule a coffee chat. Now it will be a Zoom chat with a person. You have a chat. And then you tell the person to connect you to another person in the school, to another person in the school. And that's how you form the connection. So your school should come first, and maybe your regional background. Like if you're from Africa, you look for someone from Africa. And ideally it should be maybe someone that looks like you. But these organizations in the US mainly leverage, especially with MBA recruiting, they mainly leverage on the school connections to identify who to pursue further.
Thank you, Samuel. Nomso, you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, just similar to what Sam said. Always like leverage on alumni. You have many more things to talk about. When you connect to someone from your school, because to be honest, like there's some subtle school war going on in these companies, right? So in a Barclays, for example, you have guys from Wharton, you have guys from Columbia, you have guys from NYU Stern, you have guys from Harvard. Like they are constantly telling themselves like Darden is better than Harvard, like Darden is better than Columbia, Darden is better than Stern. Like it's just a very friendly fight, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're all like Darden is better than Stanford, Darden is better than this. So imagine you going to Darden and then calling a guy from Yale working in Barclays wanting to like connect and get a job. Be like, this one, please.
He's jumping the line.
Yeah, please, I beg. So and again, the way recruiting is structured in most of these places is like they recruit per school, right? So for Barclays probably has like I think 5 slots from Darden. Then maybe in a year they might be taking say 30 or 40 associates, right? So they have what they call core schools. So Darden is a core school for most of these banks. So Darden is a core school for Credit Suisse, Barclays. No, they're not a core school for Bank of America, but Credit Suisse, Barclays, Goldman. Which other bank, Sam? Forgotten. JP Morgan. Darden is a core school for JP Morgan. JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank. Which other bank? Citi. Jeffries.
So what I'm hearing you say is identify what you want to do post MBA and look for schools that are strong in providing the opportunities around that.
Exactly. So because Darden is a core school and in most of these banks, they will come to school to recruit. So what now happens is like you now connect with the alumni, and when you call them on the phone, there's stuff about Darden that they all miss. So like an alumni will ask you, hey, how is TNDC? TNDC is Thursday Night Drinking Club here at Darden. We ask you, how is TNDC? And you say, oh, it was amazing. And then the guy can now talk about his experiences when he was at Darden going for TNDC and how they used to get wasted and everything. So like you guys can now connect from that. And once the person likes you, he's going to be like, hey, I like you. And then he'll push you to someone else. And then you keep on having the conversation until you start speaking with like the senior members of the Darden team.
Nomso and Samuel, you guys have a lot to say about recruiting, and we're really considering bringing you guys to talk about that in other dimensions that you could cover in the other webinar. But the question I want to move on to quickly, because we're running out of time and you guys are busy, is GRE GMAT. I'll start with Nomso. Why did you go for one exam? And what have you learned about the exam that you did not know before? Because there are a lot of people here who are looking to apply in the next round and are trying to make a decision between GMAT and GRE. So what advice do you have for them based on your own experience?
Me? Okay. I would say for me, like, to be honest with you guys, I started with GMAT. My quant was good, but then I failed verbal. Like my verbal was awful. Like I was getting like 47 or I got 49. I was getting 49 and 26. 49 in like quant, and then my verbal was like 26. So my scores were really low. I tried, and the more I was trying GMAT, the more my scores were getting worse. So then maybe I should try this GRE thing because people are doing GRE. Because people are doing GRE and they are acing it. So I tried GRE the first time and I failed again. Still the same problem. My quant was good. My quant was great. My English was not bad. So I was like, okay, if my English is not bad here, I can probably just put in some more work and then optimize, get as much as I can get because it's a matrix, right? Get as much as I can get from quant to pull me up so that, if I stay in the middle, somewhat in the middle for verbal, I'll be fine. Now, it's not as if I can't speak good English. I can speak good English, just that my brain is not wired the GRE and GMAT way because of how we learn. When in Africa, we don't learn critical thinking. We learn how to cram.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll do GRE. And then I stumbled on a document that was like, if you get so number of questions in verbal, this is what your score would look like. So I was like, okay, what can I do? My strength was reading comprehension. For the grammar part, either you know the grammar or you don't know it. So I was like, okay, that's 50-50. And then critical thinking, 50-50. So I was like, I'll play to my strength, which is reading comprehension. And then I'll do 50-50 for the rest. So I was able to, do my GRE. My math now pulled me up very well. And then I applied. But there's also something
What did you score in GRE, if you don't mind sharing? The breakdown.
Honestly, I can't remember. But when you convert it to GMAT, it's like 660.
Oh, okay. So your maths was scored above 315 or thereabout.
Yeah, I need to check.
That should be around 315, 320.
I think it was like 320-ish or so. Yeah. But when I can't remember the GMAT equivalent. It was like 660. But there's also something you guys should know. See, GMAT is just one of the components. If you have a strong resume and a strong essay, and your GMAT is okay, you're good.
Take a chance.
Yeah, you're good to go. To be honest.
Sam. So why did you go with GRE? Did you have to write GMAT first or write GRE first before going GMAT?
So I never wrote GRE. I just used GMAT, but I wrote it 3 times. And
you wrote GMAT 3 times.
Yeah, I wrote it 3 times. The first one was in 2017 when I had this. Stanford does this African Fellowship Scholarship thing.
Yes.
So I was selected and they paid for my GMAT. And around that time, I didn't really know much about GMAT, but it was being paid for. So I was like, okay, let me go and write. And I wrote it. and I didn't even know the interpretation of the score. I think I had like, was it 590 or something like that. So I thought maybe 590 or 800 is a good score, but apparently it was way bad. And so like it was bad, not way bad. I mean, 590 is still a good score. But it was after that Stanford thing that I decided to take like the whole MBA application process very serious. And so like I started putting in work for the GMAT. All I knew was GMAT because the people around me who went to MBA did GMAT. Now that I think about it, maybe I could have done GRE too, but like, you know, I wrote GMAT. The point is there is none, like GMAT doesn't carry more weight than GRE is a myth. So yeah, so I spent more time in learning the GMAT, and like Nomso, my verbal was also bad. So after that, like my second exam, I decided to pay attention to my verbal more, spend less time on the quant because I knew the quant was good, and so I did like a good. I put in a good amount of time, like I think 3 months before my last GMAT, and I think I was around 680 in the final score. I wanted to write again because, you know, I was always operating under the myth that I need to beat the average of the top schools to be able to accept it. But like Nomso said, you are not competing with everyone. These schools have averages per region. So they evaluate your score. The average for the entire African region for GMAT is, I think, 460 or something like that. And so if you get like 650 or 650 above, you're way above your region. And so like it doesn't put you at the level of like, you know, the Southeast Asians, like, you know, Indians or any, it doesn't put you at that level, but they don't evaluate you at par with those guys because we come from different learning backgrounds. And so once you hit a certain threshold, like let's say if you're targeting a top school, just hit like maybe above like your 650 or 660 and now channel your energy so much on the rest of the application, because believe me or not, you're not competing with the rest of the class, you're competing with the region, not the rest.
Sam, that's a very good point that you raised there. I know even GRE, because I took GRE ranks based on region. You have national and continental ranking. And I know one of the things I was happy with was my score was above the average in Africa. So I pretty much knew that amongst my peers, I was competitive, and I took that. And that's a good point that everyone needs to note, that you're not competing against the average GMAT score on the website of the class. Just try and look for those details and delve into it and see that you're above the average. And I've seen people with 310 get, in fact, in the group that I talked about earlier on, in the early days of the group, I've seen people with 315, 310, 3 something, 306 getting incredible offers. So, that's another reason.
Not to stop you, I know someone with 305 that is in Ross second year right now.
Right.
So,
So that's a big one. So the other reason why you're applying to numerous schools is sometimes it's not just about your GRE score, it's about the group of people. Take, for instance, if 5 Nigerians with above 320 apply to Darden, and you're coming with your 315, and it's past the average for your region, right? But you don't know the profile of other people. You're disadvantaged there. And that's the risk you need to factor in when you're applying to schools. You need to put into consideration the fact that you do not know the quality. And some other school that was just within your radar, people asking you apply. Only at the end of the day, realize that we had students, 5 or 2 Africans with about 300. And if you had applied to that school with your 315, you would have gotten the slot. So all those areas of uncertainty is why you need to apply to as many business schools as much as possible. Questions are pouring in. I'll take a question from Franklin. It sounds the same as what Ojola is asking. Nomso or Samuel can tackle the question, or you guys can both answer the question. And if you don't mind, this is 5 minutes past 5 o'clock. Yeah, that's 5 minutes past the 1 hour. If you don't mind spending some more time with us, would appreciate if you could take these questions for us. Yeah. So
yeah,
Franklin is asking.
Sorry, I think the calendar said up to 12:30 or 5:30, so we are good. I planned
Okay,
my
great.
accordingly.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay, I'll take that as a yes from Nomso, and I'll go through the question, if you don't mind. How can we play, Franklin is asking, how can we play the financial game without backfiring? Where do we draw the line? That's the question Franklin is asking. But I think Ojola is also saying the same thing. Or she's saying something around that area. Can they share more specifics, referring to the guest, on how they negotiated more funding? Did they do it via emails or calls? I fear appearing ungrateful for what I have received. I want to ask them if they have a campus graduate teaching opportunity as an opener. Should I go ahead? These are the two questions in that category that I'd like you guys to address.
All right. That's from OA Support. So, first of all, it's a game, right?
So can you increase the volume? Right?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, it's a game, right?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So, like, first of all, it's a game. They know that they're not the only school you apply to, so you should not be afraid or ashamed of asking for more money, right? I'm just putting this out there. Then, in terms of specifics, I won't be able to tell you how exactly I went about doing mine. But what I can say is, usually for every school, there's an admissions person that is allocated to you. Like, it might be the person who interviewed you, for your admissions, or a second year. It might be a member of the admissions committee or a second year in the school that interviewed you. Circle back to that person and say, hey, I want to hop on a call with you. I want to get on a call with you. Do you mind, speaking with me? When would you be available so I can call you? And then when you call the person, don't start off by saying, oh, I want more money. People are human beings. Everybody wants to feel good, right? So you can start off by saying, oh, how is everything? How is Charlottesville? Or wherever the person is. What's the weather? And just go off, right? And then after going off and, the person is carried away with the conversation, you can now come back and say, well, I'm excited to come to the school. I'm looking forward to it, but this is the situation. I need more money. My finances are poor, this, that. And the person will say, oh, okay, have you applied for any scholarship? This is what's available. This is what's available. You can do this application. And then just, get that advice from them, because like it's specific per school. What works for Darden will probably not work for Ross. What works for Ross will probably not work for Cornell or some other school. So I would say, circle back to whoever it is that interviewed you or whoever called you to break the news of your admissions. Circle back to that person, have a warm conversation with him or her, and then, just for me, and then
what you just shared right now, sorry to cut you short there, just to buttress your point, is what I actually did. I got fully funded from some schools, and I even got the school to increase the stipend by ×2 of what they were offering. So it just comes down to, and how did we bond? We just bonded over the weather. We bonded over little details like fishing. I don't know how to fish, but I just found out that during one of the webinars that the guy hosted, he told me about the pond, not the pond, but like a river behind his house. And when the conversation started, I was like, oh, how's the view across the window? How many fishes have you caught in the last 1 month? And we went into fishing for the next 10 minutes. By the time my question came in, there was no resistance, and I did get twice what I was expecting at the end of the day, right? Without even asking, I just said, you know what, I'm in a dilemma right now. This is what I have. Finance is a big deal for me, but it's really a difficult decision for me to make. And that changed the game for me. So what you said is really important. People want to feel like human beings. They're not machines. They're not numbers. They're real human beings you should get to know.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, me and Sam, we should just get off this call and Sam the seventh should just take over because he has a
no.
Yeah, but
someone you were going to say something about
like
that.
He has it pretty well figured out.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was a very good point. Like these are people, right? These are like when I first got the admission, the first person that I sent an email to was my waitlist manager, and like he was the person that she was the person that made a case for me that, listen, there is this guy that I helped put him off the wait list, but now he's saying he cannot go. So you guys should consider. And then they sent me a link and all those things. So like, just be very open to those people. Just know that there is a human being sitting behind the PC reading your email. And when you make a compelling case enough, this person doesn't have their heart made of vibranium. Like it's a human heart, right? And if you make a very good case, then the person is definitely going to listen to you. And if there is money, which there is, I think for every school, they are definitely going to respond to your request.
Okay. So to another question, Samuel Emmanuel Api is asking, my question is, should we focus more on the state or the school in search of university? Okay, so I think what the saying is, should you focus more on the state or the school when searching for an MBA program? Because some schools like Dartmouth is known because of names, but Texas Houston is known because of its state. So what difference does it make?
I mean, I would say like have a bucket. Like, I mean, Sam, I think you mentioned it earlier, like have a bucket. Maybe your bucket number one would contain schools in the top 15, top 30, right? Your bucket number two will contain state-known schools. And then your bucket number three will contain regional schools. The US is such a big country that irrespective of the bucket that your school might fall in, you are going to get a job. Like I know people that went to unnamed schools, like they are not MBA, they are not even MBA. Like you check US news ranking and go down the list, they are not even there, but they still have a job, right? A good paying job. So don't make it mutually exclusive. I guess that's the point that I want to make. Don't make it mutually exclusive that when I apply to a state school, I'm not going to apply to this school. I just have a list of schools, and it doesn't hurt if you, I guess that's the whole point. If you cast your net wide, it doesn't hurt at all. But the benefit of casting your net wide is that you might end up with something that you never really expected. There's one guy who is coming to Darden from Ghana, and he called me, I think the beginning of this year, that, look, my scores is not good. I just called you to advise me, like, should I spend time and rewrite the GRE again and, apply in September, or should I just apply? And I was like, what do you have to lose if you apply? $200. I mean, it's money, but it's really not, it's just like, playing like the lottery game. And this guy applied, he found out his scores wasn't really what mattered in the case. We edited his essay, we put together a very nice essay, and he's coming to Darden, right? If he had paid attention to his scores, he would have waited till September to do another application, and face the same dilemma that should I still go ahead or rewrite, So just
of which at that point in time things might have changed.
Things might have changed. You get it? So just put like a step forward, like a foot forward, and go with what you have, and don't make it mutually exclusive. Listen, if you have a score of 10 in GRE and you feel like you have a shot at Harvard, apply. The only listen, the baseball player Wayne Gronkowski or something like that, he said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah.
If you apply and you get rejected, it's the same as if you had not applied. You automatically rejected. So just go for it, no matter the score. And if it doesn't work out, just go for it with the mentality that if it doesn't work out, I'm going to try again. And who knows what might work out for you.
Yeah. Nomso, any words with respect to that?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I'm 100%, I agree with what Sam had said. But like, honestly, those GMAT scores, just get a good score. Write a solid. You'll be all right.
Yeah, just get a good score.
Just get a normal score that, just get a score that someone, I mean, if you get a 590, they'll find it easy to drop you. So, get a score that you like, well, his scores are okay. Like, for example, for Darden, when I applied, I applied last year, like the year before I entered, right? Then I had a 610 GMAT and I applied. My essay was the bomb. I know that essay was the bomb. And I got an interview invite and I was waitlisted. Like, when I spoke to my waitlist manager, she told me that we like your application, we like your resume, we like your essay, we love your essay. But the reason why we're waitlisting you is because you have a low score. Can you rewrite GMAT and we'll consider you? And I was like, yes, I will. So I went and wrote GMAT. I wrote it again. I got 600, 590. It was as if I was going down. I figured if I did it the third time, I'll probably get 580. So let me stop. And I went back to her. I was like, hey, unfortunately, my scores are not getting better. My verbal is the problem. And then she was like, okay, you know what, Nomso? Don't bother writing it again. Would you consider like applying next year? I was like, sure, I'll consider applying next year. And she was like, okay, go ahead, do it. I'll put a little note in your application. And to be honest, like, maybe there's also something I need to say that, many of you, like, I probably have not said this before. I used to visit the US then.
These days we get the hang of Zoom and we won't have to do this to one over again.
I think the issue is because you're using a free version, you cut off every 40 minutes.
Every 40 minutes, yeah.
But if you're using a paid version, then you won't be cut off. So back to what I used to visit the US every year. I found out that, so when I was speaking to her, I told her, hey, I'm visiting the US, and she was like, oh, where would you be? I was like, I'm going to Houston. And she said, okay, Darden has an event in Houston that it would be nice to meet. And I said, cool. So like I met up with her, we had a good conversation, and she was like, you know what? Don't bother writing the GMAT anymore. I've seen you, considering the fact that you made the effort to come all the way to the US for this, it shows that you're really interested in Darden, to apply. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody that got into Darden from Africa was visiting the US. It's not true. That just happened to be my situation, right? And because I couldn't cross the hurdle, but eventually I did the GRE and I was able to, scale through. But my point is, like, if you have a solid essay, and leverage on the relationships you have for people to help you, look at your essays, because these are people that have gone through the process in the past, right? So, if you have a solid essay and your score is okay, your score is not bad, you should be fine, And there's something else I want to say if
All right.
you're from Africa, you're a woman, black
Oh my
women are
goodness. That's the juicy. Right now, right now, sorry to interrupt. Right now is the time I wish I was a woman. I wish I could just identify as a woman, apply to
yes.
business school, and after 2 years, just, you know what? I'm transgendering back to being a man. I know I'd have a lot of scholarship.
So if you're a woman and you're black, I mean, come on, like every woman on this chat is black. Duh. My point is you have a great chance. Like you have awesome opportunities because black women, I mean, look at America's demographics, right? In the first place, black people are underrepresented in positions, whether it's in finance or it's in consulting or in industry, as a whole. But as a black woman from Africa, you fill 3 or 4 diversity buckets. First of all, you're black. Second of all, you're a woman. And then the third, like the fact that you're from Africa, you fill 3 diversity buckets easily. It's easier for you than a black. Like if I was an admissions officer in business school and I have a black woman, right? Same score, same experience, same essay, and I have a black man from Africa, same score, everything, I'll pick the black woman because you make me as a school look better. So leverage on that, leverage on, yeah, Hosanna, good. You're a woman, this is an eye opener. Yeah, so just leverage on, the fact that you're a woman and don't limit yourself to not thinking like they don't want you. They want you,
Okay.
So just to put that in perspective.
DJ asked the question, and I think, thank you, Samuel. Samuel has already responded to that, so I'll move on to the next question. Okay. Kim is asking, so many believe that MBA knowledge can be gotten from reading books. Choosing the big names or known names is the return for such a huge investment. Why spend such scholarships or your savings on a school that is not known and a diversity of alumni that isn't strong? Any thoughts on this, please?
Yeah, I mean, if I get a question clearly, it's like if the name is not big, don't go. Is that the point?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that is the truth. Even though MBA is mostly about the network, and I also don't believe everything can be learned from the book. Like the book would tell you, but how you assimilate that information is different. For instance, I was doing CFA, like I did CFA. I was supposed to write a level 2 right before I came to Darden. I remember telling like one of my friends that I'm not going to write the exam, even the day before, because I felt I wasn't fully prepared. But I came to Darden, and the same thing in the CFA level 2 books, the way it was taught in less than 2 months. I was like, why didn't I come here before I wrote the exam? Because I felt like I could have easily passed the exam. So it's MBA is more of an experience. It's not like you're coming to, whoever tells you MBA is like coming to learn like the way we did in undergrad is probably like, you will learn. You read more than you probably have ever read in your life, but it is more of an experience. And the people you meet are like the ones that are going to be like your partners for life. And it doesn't matter, fine, you get into Harvard or any of the top 10, top 15 schools, you make great connections, but you can also make connections in areas where you never thought you could. Like, for my boss went to Chicago Booth. He has a friend that worked at Carlson, that went to Carlson, right? And one day our internet went off. The whole country had problems with Vodafone. And guess what? The managing director of Vodafone went to Carlson. So he had to contact his friend who went to Carlson to contact the other friend who is the MD of Vodafone to help us with the situation. Chicago Booth and Carlson, but like at the end of the day, he had to fall back on quote and unquote the lower ranked school network to be able to get his problem solved. So the network is what you make it. And fine, the top schools networks are great, but there is always a juice for you to squeeze somewhere else.
Okay. So I think we're running out of time. We'll probably have about 3 to 5
gotta
minutes
run.
to cover
I have
this. Yes.
another meeting right now, so I have
Okay.
to. But
Thank you. Any last words before you go? Nomso, any last words before we let you guys go?
Yeah, I mean, let me just quickly say my last words, and then I have to set up another meeting. So what I would say is go for it. I don't know if that means much, but like whatever position you are in today, try to leverage on your background. I think my Zoom went out when Nomso was speaking, but he was kind of speaking about how you can leverage on your diversity, description, like as a woman or as a Black person or from Africa. Leverage on that background, because that's what is going to set you apart from the rest of the crowd. And whatever your position is today, like believe in yourself and go for it. Who knows what will happen?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Samuel, for your time. We really appreciate the extension you even gave us, and we hope we can keep this conversation going in some other form. Nomso?
Yes, I was just gonna say, hold on, what was I gonna say? Just keep at it. There's access to funds. America is like network heavy, so in order to achieve anything here in the US, you need to speak to someone, either someone who is in charge or something. Like you always have to like connect to people as you go on through your process. In whatever school you are, someone needs to mute her mic. In whatever school you're applying to, I would say, reach out, send those LinkedIn messages, and you'll be fine. It's an awesome like experience. Like the MBA experience is really, really awesome. You work so hard. You're gonna learn a whole lot, but at the same time, you will have fun. So